At dawn, a 17-year-old girl stood alone beside a road in Tampa, Florida. Her eyes had been covered for most of the previous 26 hours. She had been taken from her bicycle, driven to an unknown place, and held by a man she believed intended to kill her. But before he released her, she had made herself a promise: if she survived, she would remember everything. The sound of the car. The shape of the dashboard. The words written inside the glove compartment. Every turn. Every smell. Every voice. She did not know it yet, but those details would lead police to a serial killer. Her name was Lisa McVey. In the autumn of 1984, fear was spreading through the Tampa Bay area. Women were disappearing. Some were later found dead in remote places outside the city. Investigators suspected the cases were connected, but they did not have the one thing they needed most: a living witness who had seen the killer's world from the inside. Lisa had no idea that she was about to become that witness. On the night of November 3rd, Lisa finished a late shift at a donut shop and started riding her bicycle home. The streets were quiet. Pools of yellow light appeared beneath the lamps, then vanished behind her as she pedaled forward. It was a familiar journey, the kind of ordinary trip that rarely feels dangerous until it suddenly is. A man approached from behind. He forced her off the bicycle and into a car. It happened so quickly that the empty streets seemed to swallow the event. Within moments, Lisa was blindfolded, unable to tell where she was going or whether anyone had seen what happened. Fear came first. Then something colder and more deliberate took its place. Lisa understood that panic would not help her. She began to listen. She counted turns and tried to estimate distance. She noticed changes in the road beneath the tires. She listened for traffic, aircraft, trains, and anything else that might reveal the location. Even while terrified, she treated every sound as evidence. The man drove a red Dodge Magnum with a white interior. On the glove compartment, Lisa noticed the word Magnum and a digital watch. Those details seemed small, but small details are often what separate a vague description from a vehicle police can actually find. When they arrived, she was taken inside a residence. She could not see normally, so she built a map through touch and sound. The number of steps. The position of doors. The texture of the floor. The sounds made by appliances and plumbing. She paid attention whenever her blindfold shifted and stored whatever fragments she could see. The man wanted control. Lisa's only available weapon was the way he perceived her. She began to talk to him. Not because she trusted him, and not because her fear was fading, but because she needed to become a person in his mind instead of an anonymous victim. She listened to what he said and answered carefully. She tried to sound calm. She searched for any sign of hesitation she could use. Lisa later explained that she tried to create a human connection. She told him that her family needed her. She made him imagine the people who would miss her. Every sentence carried a hidden purpose: keep him talking, keep him from making a final decision, and make it harder for him to kill someone who now had a name, a history, and a future. Hours passed. Lisa was assaulted and threatened. Yet she continued collecting information. She remembered the man's approximate age, height, build, brown hair, and mustache. She studied the sound of his voice and the way he moved. She held on to details even when exhaustion made concentration difficult. She also thought about what investigators might need if she escaped. She touched surfaces and objects, aware that traces could matter. She tried to preserve a clear sequence of events. In a place designed to erase her identity, Lisa was quietly constructing a case. The psychological balance began to change. Her captor was still in control of the room, the doors, and the car. But Lisa was influencing the story he told himself. She did not challenge him openly. She encouraged the part of him that wanted to believe he could release her without being caught. She promised that she would not report him. It was not surrender. It was a survival strategy. At some point, he made a decision that other women had not been given. He would let her go. Lisa could not know whether the promise was real or another form of cruelty. She remained alert as he drove again. Still blindfolded, she listened to the route. The car slowed, stopped, and the door opened. He left her alive beside a road. For the first time in 26 hours, she was outside his control. Survival did not end the moment she was released. Lisa still had to reach safety, explain what had happened, and convince adults to believe a story that sounded almost impossible. When she returned home, members of her own family initially doubted her account. That disbelief could have ended everything. Lisa was exhausted and traumatized. Silence would have been easier. But she insisted that the police be called. When officers arrived, she began giving them the information she had protected through the entire ordeal. Her description was unusually precise. The red Dodge Magnum. The white interior. The lettering inside the car. The digital watch near the glove compartment. The man's physical appearance. The route, sounds, and environment she had reconstructed without being able to see clearly. To a detective, those were not random memories. They were searchable clues. The report reached investigators already working on the murders of women around Tampa. Lisa's account resembled parts of the pattern they were studying, but it also gave them something new, a suspect who was alive, mobile, and driving a distinctive vehicle. The timing was critical. 4 months, detectives had been forced to work backward from isolated scenes. They could compare locations, study fibers, and search records, but the person responsible remained outside the frame. Lisa changed the direction of the investigation. She could describe movement, how the man approached, how he spoke, what he drove, and what surrounded him. Instead of asking only what had happened to earlier victims, police could begin asking where the same man might be found next. Her description was valuable because its details reinforced one another. A red car alone was common. A red Dodge Magnum was less common. Add the white interior, the writing near the glove compartment, the digital watch, the driver's approximate age and appearance, and the search became narrower. Investigators did not have to rely on one perfect memory. They could test several independent details against the same suspect. Police began looking for the red Dodge Magnum. On November 15, detectives saw a man in a car that matched Lisa's description. The driver was Bobby Joe Long, a 31-year-old Tampa area resident. His brown hair, mustache, build, and vehicle were consistent with what Lisa had reported. Investigators now had a name to examine and a car they could connect to a crime. The next day, November 16, police arrested Long in connection with Lisa's kidnapping and assault. Search warrants allowed investigators to examine his car and residence. Hair and fiber evidence helped link him to Lisa's abduction. The objects she had memorized were no longer isolated images in a frightened teenager's mind. They had become part of a physical chain of evidence. The arrest opened a much darker investigation. Detectives questioned Long about a series of killings that had terrified the region. Evidence and statements connected him to multiple victims. Long ultimately pleaded guilty to 8 murders as part of an agreement, and he was convicted and sentenced in additional proceedings. The full legal record grew across years of trials and appeals, but the crucial break had begun with the girl he released. The scale of the case can make the victims disappear behind a single notorious name. They should not. Each woman had a life that extended far beyond the way she entered a police file. Families waited for answers while investigators tried to connect scenes scattered across the region. Lisa's evidence did not undo those losses. What it did was give detectives a path toward accountability and help prevent the list from growing. That is also why the story should not be reduced to a contest of intelligence between a criminal and a survivor. Lisa was 17. She should never have needed a survival plan. Responsibility belonged entirely to the man who abducted and assaulted her. Her presence of mind was remarkable, but it was not a standard other victims failed to meet. People respond to terror in different ways, and survival is never proof of greater worth. Lisa had not simply escaped. She had carried the investigation out with her. That distinction matters, because stories about survival are often told as if the survivor was rescued by chance. Lisa's release involved chance, but it also involved decisions made under extraordinary pressure. She regulated her fear enough to observe. She recognized that memory could become evidence. She adapted her behavior to influence a dangerous man. Then, after returning home, she fought to be believed. Each part was necessary. If she had forgotten the model of the car, police might have been searching for thousands of vehicles. If she had missed the white interior, the magnum lettering, or the digital watch, the description would have been less distinctive. If she had accepted her family's disbelief and remained silent, detectives might never have received the lead when they needed it. Her account also reveals something investigators understand but the public sometimes overlooks: eyewitness memory is not a recording. Under trauma, memories can become fragmented. Lisa did not remember everything because fear somehow made her superhuman. She remembered because she deliberately gave her mind a task. Listening, counting, touching, and repeating details gave structure to chaos. The strategy helped keep her focused on the future. Every remembered fact assumed there would be a later moment when she could speak. In that sense, gathering evidence was also an act of hope. It required another kind of courage after she reached safety. Telling the story meant returning to it in words, first at home, then with police, and later through the justice system. Each retelling placed her memory under examination. Investigators had to distinguish what could be verified, attorneys would test the evidence, and strangers would eventually discuss the case in public. Lisa continued anyway because the information could protect someone else. The evidence soon confirmed that her observations were not guesses. The car was real. The distinctive interior was real. The physical evidence supported her account. The teenager who had initially been doubted had given investigators one of the clearest leads in the entire case. The case changed Lisa's life, but it did not define the limits of her future. She later entered law enforcement and became a sheriff's deputy. She worked with young people, including as a school resource officer. The teenager who once struggled to make adults believe her became an adult responsible for listening when others said they were in danger. Decades passed while Long remained on death row. The legal process continued through appeals and reviews. On May 23, 2019, Florida executed him for the murder of Michelle Sims. Lisa attended. For many observers, the execution marked the final line in a notorious criminal case. For Lisa, the meaning was more personal and more complicated. She had survived him at 17. She had helped expose him. She had built a career and a life beyond the worst night she had experienced. No court proceeding could return the years lost by the victims or remove the trauma carried by survivors. But the man who once controlled whether she lived or died no longer controlled the ending of her story. Lisa McVey's survival is sometimes described as a miracle. The word captures the improbability, but it can hide the work she did inside those 26 hours. She watched when she could. She listened when she could not. She remembered when forgetting might have felt easier. She spoke when the people closest to her doubted her. Most importantly, she understood a truth her captor did not: control of the present is not control of what happens next. He had a locked room, a blindfold, and a car. Lisa had observation, language, and the belief that someone would eventually listen. Those tools appeared small, yet they were enough to turn a victim into the witness who helped end a killing spree. The red car was found. The fibers were matched. The suspect was arrested. Other women were no longer left exposed to the same danger. And it began with a 17-year-old girl standing beside a road at dawn, repeating the details to herself so that none of them would disappear. She remembered the car. She remembered the man. She remembered everything that mattered.